Imagine a quiet morning. Sunlight filters through your kitchen window, steam curls from a saucepan, and you crack open an egg boiled for exactly 3 minutes. The yolk spills out in a golden, creamy river, pooling over buttery toast. A perfect start to the day, right? But what if that tender, luscious yolk isn't just a breakfast delight? What if, beneath its glossy surface, it's harboring something unseen, something that could turn your cozy morning into a week of agony? You've heard the whispers before. Soft-boiled eggs are risky. Those runny yolks are full of bacteria. But then there's the other camp. The foodies who swear by 3-minute eggs as the pinnacle of culinary pleasure. The chefs who dismiss safety warnings as overreactions. You're caught in the middle, aren't you? One side says live a little, the other says play it safe. But this isn't just a debate about texture or taste. It's a battle between two extremes. On one hand, the fear of salmonella poisoning that keeps you boiling eggs until they are as hard as rocks, stripping them of any joy. On the other, the allure of that perfect, jiggly yolk that makes you wonder, how much risk is really worth taking? Let's go deeper. You've probably boiled eggs countless times. Maybe you follow your mom's old method, or a recipe you found online. But have you ever stopped to think about what's actually happening inside that shell as time ticks by? At 3 minutes, the white is set, but the yolk is still liquid, a state some call soft-boiled. 10 minutes later, both white and yolk are firm, a classic hard-boiled egg. But why does that 7-minute difference matter so much? Is it just about how runny the yolk is, or is there a hidden science at play here? One that affects not just your taste buds, but your very health. Doctors warn about vulnerable groups. Pregnant women, the elderly, anyone with a weakened immune system. They say those soft yolks might as well be a petri dish for bacteria. But then you see food bloggers on Instagram showcasing dripping yolks like they are the epitome of gourmet safety. How can there be such a divide? You start to wonder, are you overreacting? Or are the risks being downplayed for the sake of aesthetics? And let's not forget the nutrients. You've heard that overboiling destroys vitamins, but underboiling might leave pathogens intact. So it's a tightrope walk. Too little time, and you're gambling with your gut. Too much, and you're eating a nutritionally barren version of what could be a superfood. Where do the sweet spot lie? Is there even a right answer? Or is this just another kitchen myth we've accepted without question? Here's the cold, hard truth. Every time you drop an egg into boiling water, you're making a choice with consequences. Consequences that go far beyond whether your yolk runs or holds its shape. This isn't just about eggs. It's about trust. In recipes, in experts, in your own instincts. How do you navigate a world where advice contradicts itself? Where safety and pleasure seem at odds? The debate has raged for decades, dividing families, chefs, and scientists alike. Some swear by the 10-minute rule. Others mock it as paranoid. But what if the real danger isn't in the bacteria itself, but in the myths and misunderstandings that surround it? What if the solution lies not in following a strict timer, but in understanding the delicate balance between heat, time, and biology? You're about to discover that the perfect boil is more than a kitchen trick. It's a puzzle that blends science, culture, and personal risk, one that could change the way you cook eggs forever. But first, let's peel back the layers and confront the question that's been boiling beneath the surface. When it comes to those 3 to 10 minutes on the stove, who should you really trust? And more importantly, how can you protect yourself without sacrificing the joy of a perfectly cooked egg? This is where the experts clash. Microbiologists talk in logarithmic reductions. Every minute at 160 degrees F, 71 degrees C, kills 90% of salmonella. So 10 minutes at a rolling boil, that's a near total annihilation. But chefs and food writers argue that such extremes betray the egg's essence. They'll cite French oeufs à la coque, gently cooked in water just below boiling, served with a tiny spoon to scoop out the custardy yolk. In Japan, onsen tamago, eggs simmered for hours in 147 degrees F, 64 degrees C, water, resulting in a yolk that's thick like melted cheese. These aren't mistakes. They're cultural traditions, born from environments where egg safety is prioritized at the source. So why does the Western world treat all eggs as ticking time bombs? Here's the root of the conflict. Fear vs. familiarity. Decades ago, A salmonella outbreak in the UK linked to undercooked eggs traumatized a generation, leading to strict guidelines that boiled eggs into submission. In the US, the USDA still warns against any runny yolk for vulnerable groups, painting a picture of danger so vivid that even healthy adults flinch at the sight of a jiggly yolk. Yet in countries with rigorous egg safety standards, like Japan, where eggs are washed, graded, and stamped with a harvest date, soft-boiled eggs are everyday fare. You see the paradox. The risk isn't universal. It's a product of where you live, how eggs are processed, and who you trust to tell you what's safe. But let's get back to your kitchen. When you follow a recipe that says boil for 10 minutes, you're not just cooking an egg, you're participating in a legacy of caution. That caution has its place, of course. Pregnant women, whose immune systems are compromised, can't afford even a 1% chance of infection. For them, a hard-boiled egg is non-negotiable. But what about you, a healthy adult who craves that golden yolk? Are you doomed to choose between joy and safety? The science says no, but it also says it's complicated. Let's talk about nutrient loss. Eggs are packed with vitamin D, selenium, and antioxidants like lutein. Heat damages these nutrients, but the extent depends on time and temperature. A 10-minute boil might reduce vitamin C by 18%, but a 3-minute soft boil loses just 5%. Yet no one talks about this balance in the panic over bacteria. You're sold a binary, safe or risky, rubbery or dangerous. But the truth is a spectrum, one that factors in your health, your egg's quality, and how much risk you're willing to accept for the sake of taste. Here's another layer most recipes ignore: the temperature of your water. Drop an egg into boiling water, and the shock heats the shell faster than the interior, creating hot spots. Gently bring the water to a simmer instead, and the heat penetrates evenly, reaching the yolk without overcooking the white. It's a technique that transforms the debate from how long to how gently. But how many home cooks know this? You've been taught to set a timer, not to read the water's rhythm, to fear the clock instead of understanding the chemistry. And let's not dismiss the cultural tug-of-war. In France, the soft-boiled egg is a symbol of simplicity, served with soldiers of buttered toast for dipping, a breakfast so iconic it's almost sacred. In the US, the hard-boiled egg is a lunchbox staple, peeled and sliced, safe but often dry. These aren't just cooking methods, they're cultural identities. When you choose how to boil your egg, you're aligning with a tradition, a philosophy of food, one that values either caution or pleasure as the ultimate virtue. So the deep question isn't, are soft-boiled eggs safe? It's, why has this become a battle between fear and indulgence, when the reality is so much more nuanced? You've been fed extremes because they're easier to market than complexity. A 10-minute rule is a soundbite, explaining bacterial load, egg handling, and personal risk tolerance. That's a conversation. And in a world of quick fixes, who has time for that? But here's what happens when you ignore the nuance. You either miss out on the culinary delight of a perfectly runny yolk, or you gamble with safety without understanding the odds. The root of the problem isn't the egg itself. It's the myth that there's one right way to cook it, one answer that fits everyone. Life isn't that simple, and neither is your breakfast. As we peel back these layers, you're starting to see that the perfect boil is a personal equation, blending science, culture, and your own health profile. But before we get to the solutions, the strategies that let you have your yolk and eat it too, let's confront the silent consequences of getting this wrong. Because whether you undercook or overcook, the effects go beyond the plate, seeping into how you trust your instincts, follow advice, and even relate to the food on your table. Let's talk about the consequences you don't see, the ones that linger long after the plate is cleared. Every time you default to a 10-minute boil out of fear, you're not just cooking an egg into submission. You're training yourself to distrust nuance. Your brain craves simplicity. If X, then Y. A formula that bypasses the messy reality of bacterial load, egg freshness, and your own body's resilience. It's a cognitive shortcut, sure, but it also erodes your ability to make nuanced decisions about food and life. How many other choices have you simplified this way, trading richness for rigidity? Think about the last time you ate a hard-boiled egg that was just slightly overcooked. The yolk ringed with gray, dry enough to stick in your throat. You choked it down, telling yourself it was safer. But what if that small sacrifice chips away at your relationship with food? When eating becomes a checklist of do's and don'ts, pleasure fades, and pleasure is vital. Studies link enjoyment of meals to better digestion, lower stress, even improved nutrient absorption. So by boiling the joy out of your eggs, are you undermining the very health you're trying to protect? Then there's the silent erosion of trust, both in others and in yourself. You've been told to fear runny yolks by authorities who can't account for your specific context. The farm your eggs came from, how quickly they were refrigerated, whether you're young and robust or immunocompromised. This one-size-fits-all advice creates a paradox. You either blindly obey, feeling like a child who can't be trusted with a timer, or you rebel, dismissing all warnings as fear-mongering. Neither path is empowering. You're left wondering, when did cooking become something to fear instead of a skill to master? For vulnerable groups, the stakes are stark. A pregnant woman who eats a softly boiled egg from an unregulated source takes a risk that could harm her fetus. A risk that's not worth any culinary delight. But here's the insidious part. The blanket warnings often make everyone feel like a member of that vulnerable group, even when they are not. You might be perfectly healthy, with access to high-quality eggs, yet still hesitate to cook for less than 10 minutes because the fear has been baked into your brain. That's cultural conditioning at work, turning a rational precaution into a universal phobia. And let's not forget the nutritional toll. Over time, those overboiled eggs add up. Vitamin D, crucial for bone health and mood, is sensitive to heat. Each extra minute on the stove diminishes it. Selenium, a mineral that supports your thyroid and immune system, starts to degrade at higher temperatures. You might think you're playing it safe, but you're quietly depriving your body of nutrients, especially if eggs are a staple in your diet. It's a slow burn, the kind of consequence that doesn't show up until years later, when a blood test reveals a deficiency you can't trace back to that morning timer. Here's the deeper truth. The way you boil eggs reflects how you navigate uncertainty in life. Do you cling to rigid rules, even when they don't fit your reality? Or do you take the time to understand variables, like egg quality, your own health status, and cooking techniques, that let you tailor your approach? The problem with the 3 vs. 10 minutes debate is that it frames cooking as a battle between danger and control, when it's actually a dance between knowledge and intuition. But how do you escape this binary? Let's start with what you can control. High-quality eggs matter. Look for farms that practice good hygiene or brands that pasteurize their eggs. Yes, pasteurized eggs exist, and they are a game changer for soft-boiled lovers. Then there's the art of gentle cooking. Starting eggs in cold water, letting the temperature rise gradually so the yolk warms evenly without shocking the white into rubberiness. These aren't just hacks. They're ways to reclaim agency in the kitchen, to turn a stressful decision into a mindful act. Yet even with all this, the question remains, how much risk is acceptable? It's a question no timer can answer. For some, the thrill of a runny yolk is worth the tiny chance of contamination, especially when that chance is minuscule with proper egg handling. For others, the peace of mind from a hard-boiled egg is worth the slight nutrient loss. There's no shame in either choice, as long as it's an informed one. The danger comes when you stop asking questions, when you let fear or dogma dictate every decision. That's when cooking becomes a chore and food becomes fuel, nothing more. But eggs are more than protein packets. They're a canvas for pleasure, a link to cultural traditions, a daily ritual that can ground you in the present. To reduce them to a timer setting is to miss the magic of that golden yolk spilling over toast, the satisfaction of mastering a technique that feels both scientific and sensual. So here's the challenge. Instead of chasing a perfect time, chase understanding. Learn where your eggs come from. Experiment with temperatures and timings, starting with short boils and gradually adjusting as you build confidence. And most importantly, give yourself permission to see this as a spectrum, not a cliff, where safety and joy can coexist, as long as you're willing to engage with the complexity. The next time you stand over the stove, listen to the waters simmer instead of staring at the clock. Feel the weight of the egg in your hand, remember the journey it took to reach you, and ask, what does my body need today? What would bring me delight without recklessness? That's the real solution, turning a decades-old debate into a personal dialogue. one that honors both science and soul. Because cooking eggs isn't just about avoiding bacteria or preserving nutrients. It's about reclaiming a small corner of your life where you get to decide what matters most. And in a world full of conflicting advice, that's a power worth boiling for.